Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMScast. My name is Chris Badgett, and today we have a special guest, Jonathan Denwood. Jonathan has two podcasts. One of them is called WP-Tonic. The other one is called Mail Right, which is for the real estate industry. And he also has a SaaS or software as a service product called Mail Right that serves the real estate industry and does particular things in that niche. I wanted to get Jonathan on the show and talk to him kind of in the trenches as a WordPress person, as somebody who's building a SaaS product and an online business. And we're going to unpack some lessons learned and just kind of share some of the experiences that we've come across as people who have been in the trenches with online business for a while. And also through our podcast platforms, had the pleasure and honor to interview so many different people, which gives us even more perspective than our own personal experience. But first, Jonathan, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure coming on your podcast. I listen to it regularly and I've learned many things from it, Chris.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, kind of where you came from, and then we're going to kind of get into your story a little more detail.
Well, a bit of a veteran of the online industry. Basically, I got into it as a hobby in the late 90s, actually, when we had modems, you know. I still love that sound, really. And I had a successful retail business, which I started in my early 20s. That was actually in dry cleaning, and they had expanded to a major production unit with 4 satellite units, and that kept me busy. But I just got kind of always been a little bit artistic with drawing and that, and then and also I loved my gadgets, my technology. So when the internet came alive, it was the combination of various factors that really appealed to me. And I decided to, as a mature student, to do a university course. I would be the only person in my family, and I decided to do that full time plus run my business. And you're going to get a thread here, folks, that I tend to take on multiple things. In England, the university courses, if you do them full time, are about 3 years in length, and it was very close. At the time, there was only 2 universities in the London or the surrounding areas that were doing courses around multimedia, as they called it. And funny enough, the one university was my local university that was only 1 mile away from my main business. So I trotted down and saw the course director, and they accepted me. But they were still producing CD-ROMs using a product called Director for multimedia. I don't know if you ever heard of it, Chris, or...
Maybe. I remember CD-ROMs, but I don't remember a director.
No, he's a puppy compared to me. It was CD-ROM production through Director or Visual Basic, and then they threw in some 3D courses as well, or sound courses, and anything else that the tutors were into. So it was a bit of a mixture. And then the web really started getting big during those 3 years. So they really threw out most of the established courses and put in more web courses in it. And that's where I kind of developed my interest in all this. And after I passed that and got my degree, I did some part-time freelances as a Flash action script developer, actually, Chris. And all my confessions are coming out now, Chris, that I actually produce stuff in Flash. But I really enjoyed that and I was running my other business, and then you had the .com crash, and all the flash work just disappeared, Chris. Just disappeared.
Wow. And so bring us to today, like now where you became you're a self-admitted WordPress junkie. You're really into working in the real estate niche. Tell us like what your projects that you said you can never do just one. So what are you juggling today?
Well, I should just do one, but I don't think I'm the only one. I was listening to the Matt report, and Matt admits that he's got various things going. So I'm not, and I think you might be the same. I'm not sure, but well, how it happened was I married an American lady, and we lived in England for a while. And then she said she just had enough of it. She loved Britain, but she said she couldn't tolerate the weather anymore. And it was a big decision, but I agreed that we should move to America. And I've ended up in northern Nevada, of all places. And then I got into, I took a year off because I was a little bit burnt out. And I just wanted to take and become a ski bum for a year, basically. And then I was looking at the next thing, and I really got into WordPress. This was WordPress 2.8. I think it was just before the menu system got integrated from WooCommerce, and I think that was 3.0, I think. And that's when I got into it. It was still seen as a very much a blogging platform, and this was before custom posts, and it was very restrictive compared to some other CRMs. I also, in England, before I moved, I had done not only Flash work, I was recently involved in the Expression Engine community. If people listening to this, it's still going. Still owned by the Alice Labs, and it's still a smallish community, nothing like the size of the WordPress community, but it was really quite popular in Britain at the time. So I was doing some Expression Engine work when I moved to America, and then I got on to WordPress, and as soon as 3.0 came along and they sorted out the menu and also custom posts, I kind of really could see that this was probably, and with their plugin, the amount of plugins and just how much more easy it was to teach people how to use it compared to, like, let's say Drupal or Joomla, I could see that it probably was going to be a major player in the CRM market. So I decided to really delve into that, Chris.
So when did you make the jump from, working with WordPress and building projects or maybe charging for clients and things to building a podcast around the WordPress topic?
Well, it was really like most things. You kind of, what happened was, obviously, for a couple of years I was doing okay. Then the recession hit, and it was really quite vicious in northern Nevada. And a lot of my customer base was local, and a lot of it went bust.
Was this were these freelance small business clients that you were building WordPress websites for, or what's the customer base?
A lot of that. Also, a couple of medium clients that we had to be on retainers. They went under as well. It was a bit of a bloodbath in northern Nevada when it came to business. It was the first couple of years when I moved, it was booming. There were construction everywhere, Chris. It was practically impossible to get yourself booked into any kind of restaurant at almost any day of the week.
Wow.
There were so many people in the construction industry building things in northern Nevada. And then in a 6-month period, it practically all disappeared. And so luckily, I had money in the bank, and but also my customer supply. So I thought I need to get more clients and more exposure outside of Northern Nevada. How to do that? And I met my first co-host of WP-Tonic, Bill Conrad, and he was big into podcasting, and he said, "Why don't you do a podcast and I'll be your co-host?" And I thought, this must be, because I'd been thinking about it for over 6-7 months, but I just couldn't be bothered to do that. Like most things, isn't it, Chris? It's that first step, isn't it?
Right. And here you are. I'm on the WP-Tonic website right now, and I'm just going to get your current
I think it's
podcast number.
184, I think.
185.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here you are. How long ago was that from this recording did you start the podcast?
I think that must have been about, we're now on to almost 3 years now. It's really similar to Matt of the Matt Report. And it's been a real education. It's been a real eye-opener doing the podcast. I practically know everybody in the WordPress community now. And I'm blessed with a fantastic co-host, another great co-host, John Locke, who came on board, I think, 8-9 months ago. And with his help, we've built the audience to a very the past 2 to 3 months, we've doubled our audience.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, let's park it right here for a little bit on podcasting. One of the questions that I get asked all the time from course creators and digital entrepreneurs is how, what kind of marketing works, and I always tell them 3 things. There's inbound, outbound, and relationship. Inbound is content marketing. Outbound is actually prospecting and going places, events, sending cold emails, calls, all that stuff. And then there's relationships. For me, podcasting has been a huge content creation machine and also relationship building vehicle. But what have you discovered in your journey with now 2 podcasts? WP-Tonic and the Mail Right podcast.
Well, I do agree with you. I think the power of podcasting is that I was kind of brought up on the BBC. I was brought up on Radio 4, Radio 3. Won't mean a lot to your US listeners, but anybody based in the UK will understand that.
Well, it's like NPR in the US, right? National Public Radio.
Yeah. So I was kind of brought up on that, really. And I think the power of podcasting is that there's something very personal about it, and people if they listen to your podcast and become regular listeners, they become very loyal supporters and listeners to the show. And I think that kind of building relationship is powerful, much more than other mediums. I think the other thing is you got to realise is my interests are really guided by the necessities of the business, and at the present moment there's 2 areas that I've become obsessed about, and that's SEO, search engine optimization, and outbound marketing, and the other one is Facebook. They are the 2 areas over the past year that I've totally engrossed myself in.
Okay.
And I think if you're selling any kind of online service or marketing, a course, a membership website, an e-commerce product, it doesn't really matter what it is. If you really don't have a fundamental understanding of SEO and a fundamental understanding of Facebook, I really think you're going to find things difficult.
Absolutely. And I mean, just on the podcasting note, one of the reasons first of all, I just love it and I love the relationships, but it's so powerful for SEO because first of all, for me anyways, it's easier to talk and have a conversation with somebody like yourself. This becomes, a blog post that gets also syndicated through iTunes and other places. I use a service called Rev to get the audio transcribed. So when the podcast is published, every single word we're saying here becomes a keyword phrase that, gets indexed. And, when people are Googling for, how to grow an online course business with podcasting, that keyword phrase is just right there in the text. And now they're going to find this interview. It's mostly about, in my view, the long tail keyword phrases that are really niche focused. Like you mentioned, you're in the WordPress community and, the custom post types and the menus and the different versions and all this stuff. There's all this terminology that people are trying to figure out. And podcasting is just a way to crank out that SEO stuff, especially if you just do one little thing, which makes it easier for SEO stuff to be indexed by having a transcript. But what are some of your tips and tricks on SEO?
Well, you really got to think about it because you did the smart thing in a way, really, because your podcast is very much aimed at your SaaS product is aimed at. When I decided to go at the time, I was a traditional regional, mostly WordPress, but I would also delve in some other CRMs if WordPress wasn't suitable. I've moved that on to becoming a totally WordPress based and moving away from the traditional agency model to some degree to a maintenance security company aimed at small to medium professional businesses. That's the focus on the commercial side of WP-Tonic, and the podcast is about the general community. So in SEO terms, the spread of terms are much more broader than what would naturally be produced, because your show is really around the topic where your SaaS product is also focused on. So the podcast was developed before I decided to move down that Pacific WordPress channel. So I've been trying to match up and trying to teach Google what areas that I want it to see and what areas I don't. So internal link structure. And the problem with SEO is everybody thinks that there's tricks, but the success in SEO really, Chris, is methodical method. Having a checklist for your posts and making all the images are tagged correctly, making sure that you've got a certain level of links, internal links to other pages, pruning, as I call it, actually doing a 3-month to 6-month audit and either removing pages that are not getting traffic or redirecting them so they're redirected to pages that are getting a certain level of traffic. Doing that basically, not just writing a post just for the sake of writing it. Actually, there's a number of tools. The one I use is SEO Rush. Is actually looking at the competitors, and if I've got an idea for a post, what phrases, what terms are getting enough volume to make it worthwhile, because I'm a great believer in of a guy called Brian Dean. I don't know if you heard of him.
Is he the Backlinko?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a few like people I really listen to on SEO. I like him. I've also learned a lot from Rebecca Gill.
Yes, Rebecca Gill. She's been on the show. I'm actually a plug for. I'm actually. She's doing a virtual conference next week, and I'm actually joining that as a participant because I've learned a lot from Rebecca, and I do agree with her philosophy on that. But back to Brian Dean. Brian Dean, a lot of people say it's, if you publish good content and you publish enough of it, you will get traffic. And I just totally disagree with that. I think that's the road to madness, basically. I think what you got to do is do some pre-investigation, and then you've got to write something that's better than the competition. And then you go back to it periodically to update it, and you improve it. And then you've got to market that content vigorously. You've got to do outreach through email, telephone, and you've got to tell that's part of your research. People that have utilized similar content before, and then tell them about your better content.
Yeah. So Brian Dean is at backlinko.com. And one of the things I'd learned from him was just a technique he called the skyscraper technique, which is pretty much what you're saying, where find the best post on whatever the phrase is and just make something better, make it long, make it in depth, spend a lot of time researching and making sure it's adding value. You can put some content upgrades on there where people opt in to get something else, and now you're building your email list. But the first goal is just getting that SEO value, and just having a great, I would rather have like one giant post come out in 60 days as opposed to doing like a 250 or 500 word blog post a day for 60 days. I would much rather have that one really awesome long post.
Yeah, this way I see it. I think like most battles are won really before the first shot is even fired. The battles, to use the military anathema, are a bit of a contradiction, and I think you can apply it to web businesses. What do I mean by this? Well, most battle plans are useless. When the first shot is the actual, how the battle will commence goes out the window because there's just too many variables. But on the other hand, making sure, like, if you got 3 times more tanks and you got 3 times more artillery and you got a good idea of the tactics of your opposition and what tactics will appeal to them, and you make sure that you've got overwhelming force to meet, which is pretty obvious what they're going to do, there's a pretty good chance you're going to win, isn't there, Chris?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there's the contradiction. What I mean is most battles are won before they're even fought. But just blogging for the sake of blogging, just churning out content and hoping that people will find it, unless you're a big name in that specific area, it's very unlikely that's going to happen, isn't it?
That's true. And I love what you're saying, too, about checklists. The habits are almost even more important than the strategy, where, for example, when we publish at LifterLMS, when we publish a YouTube video, even this podcast episode we're doing right now, it's also a video. That's very intentional because we're going to have an SEO optimized title. We're going to actually fill out the YouTube description. In the first part, there's going to be a link to our site that's clickable in Google and YouTube. We're going to use strategically smart tags in the, applying some tags to help tell Google what it's all about, and or YouTube, and then we'll also upload the transcript. All that stuff, that's just part of a checklist. And just the very fact that we do that, I mean, the battle is won before it's even fought. Like, you can't, that's what it's all about, the habit. And it's not about the hustle and the struggle of 18-hour days. It's about having a smart check. I can hustle, and I have had plenty of 18-hour days in my life, but what I'd really prefer are great habits and great checklists.
Well, that is necessary. You've got to have good content, folks. I also, for various reasons, are the worst person for this. Having a good co-host on the WP-Tonic, he has helped on that side considerably, but also educating myself over the past 8 months in this area has really shown me also. And you also got to have some plan on your website with internal link structure. But that should be part of your pruning exercise. We're going through a major pruning of the WP-Tonic website as we talk, and we'll be getting rid of a lot of the pages that are not getting traffic because they're basically diluting your domain authority. That's the problem with that. And in the actual, obviously WP Curve got taken over by GoDaddy, so they're not so active in their content marketing as they were. Obviously, WP Site Care, they have a small team that's just dedicated to that. But I'm just looking to improve the overall traffic numbers to the WP-Tonic site and trying to get the Tonic site on page 1 of certain key terms, and then the fight's on to actually the only terrible thing about organic search is that it's well known that if you're in the top 3 you get 70% of all traffic, and if you're below those 3 you get about 5 to maybe 3% of the gravy. That's the terrible thing about it, isn't it, Chris?
Definitely. Well, let me ask you another question. Just in general, you mentioned having a co-host has been helpful, but and I would say in general, like finding partnerships in business is a good thing. I couldn't do what I do without a strong partnership. But in terms of podcasting specifically, what is the value of a co-host? And could you speak to that, and also just the power of partnerships in general in business?
I think that it's like anything, isn't it? A partnership is really like a marriage, and a bad marriage. I'm unfortunately divorced, and going through the experience of a bad marriage isn't a fantastic experience, even though I had a large part to do with that. It's very similar to a bad partnership in business, isn't it, Chris? It's a terrible experience. But on the other hand, you meet a lot of people. They say, "Oh, I will never go into partnership with other people," and so I had this bad experience. Well, I just don't agree with that. The person I learned is Brian Clark from Studio Press when I had him on my podcast, and then we also had a couple of discussions. He spent a little bit of time in private discussing some things with me, and he said, he's great success for Studio Press and other companies were finding great partners and learning the things you lack, finding a partner that can do the things that you can't do, that enjoys doing them. And he said he strongly advised me to look for strong partners. I'm trying to, one of the problems with Mail Right is that I've tried to do everything myself with that, and I'm actively looking to get a partner to help. It's got to the stage where I think it needs a partner to help with that.
Let's pick up. I just want to pick up your story right here for the listener. Mail Right is another podcast you do besides WP-Tonic, but what is the Mail Right product, or what direction is it? What problems is it trying to solve, and who does it serve?
Well, I think with most real estate agents and bespoke brokerages, boutique brokerages, let's be frank about it, it's a commission-based business. And most the actual facts of the industry are quite brutal, actually. Most people, when they become certified, registered and do their state exam, after a 1 year period, almost 70% of those that entered the industry no longer are practicing real estate agents.
And let me just jump in there too and say that I think this is also something that people don't talk about in the online course industry, which is, a lot of people try to start an online course and they try to market it. And, you hear a lot about the people who made it and had this awesome course, but there's this huge number of people it didn't work out so well for. And that's the problem I like to attack with LifterLMS. It's like, how do we help more people find success or set them up for success? But that's what you're doing, right? With Mail Right. Like, are you working on that problem of, like, a lot of realtors don't make it?
Well, and the reason why they don't make it is they exhaust their friends and family.
You only have so many of those.
Yeah. So you then got a market. You then got to become an actual business. Most real estate agents don't realise, because they normally come from being employees to becoming their own boss.
They're entrepreneurs. I mean, it's entrepreneurship, even if you work at a brokerage.
Yeah, totally. Because the brokerage will not really do much when it comes. They expect you, as a self-employed real estate agent, to market yourself, right? They will offer certain advice, certain products. A lot, and I'm not being dismissive here. I'm just telling it as it is. A lot of the brokerage's advice was very the way they built their business 20 years ago is not really a very effective advice on how to build up a successful real estate business in 2017.
Yeah, and for those people listening, I'd encourage you to check out in the archives of LMScast. We have some podcast episodes specifically for the real estate industry where we talk about courses that people can make if you're a real estate agent or a broker and you're trying to get either seller or buyer leads. And I talked about this too when I was on your podcast at the Mail Right show. So look it up over on the Mail Right podcast. But what worked, the world changed dramatically in how people shop for real estate with the growing internet, all the apps, the smartphone. I mean, the whole game is completely changed. It's not gone like travel agents, but it's been dramatically disrupted in the past 10 years.
Yeah, it's changed. I actually do believe that there always will be a place for a quality real estate agent. It is normally the biggest asset that a private individual holds.
It's not like a vacation. I mean, you might be spending $200,000, $300,000, $500,000. I mean, there's a place for service there.
Trying to negotiate. When you're talking about one of the most important purchases and trying to negotiate face to face with the other person in a business-like way that doesn't inject enormous emotion is impossible for most individuals. And that's why they hire a real estate agent, because it's aggro. It's not going to be an easy road. But the actual finding of property, that's where things have changed enormously. So what Mail Right does is it offers a suite of elements to help the agent. We write 5 to 7 professionally written stories. A couple of them, they're all kind of person focused, uplifting, interesting stories, which the agent should send to they should be building up their database. And that's the whole point of the first 2-3 years of a real estate agent, is building up your database. And that database really needs to be broken up into different sections. Those that you feel are actively looking for property, those in the next year might be moving or looking to buy or sell. And then the the biggest of your list are people that are not actively in the market, but you need to touch them every month just to keep your face in front of that audience, because they might know somebody that is either buying or selling. But sending them dry, factual, what the market is doing in the next 6 months isn't appropriate to that audience. So we provide some really short, fun stories that they can choose one and send it, and it has an interface that's really easy to use. And then we have a social media calendar where we actually fill that calendar in with content at the first of the month, with relevant content that would appeal to, that would be expected from a real estate agent, and that's pushed to the agent's Twitter and their Facebook business page, and they can add content to it as well. And it has a library system as well.
That's incredible. I just want to point out that just the power of niching down, like you're really getting niche focused on serving this particular type of customer, and how awesome that is. Because it's really easy to think that things have already been done. Like in the online course world, for example, there's a lot of technology courses like Team Treehouse, lynda.com, Code Academy, but that's just the early adopters of the market. There's so many other things to teach online. There's whole industries that are barely getting started coming online. And when it comes to things like marketing and sales, internet marketing has been around for a long time, and, autoresponders and building landing pages and opt-in pages and all that stuff. And people like you and me who are like WordPress and marketing technologists, we are the early adopters. But if you take that same set of tools and give it to someone who's non-technical and not planning on becoming technical, it's overkill and it's too complicated and it doesn't work. So they need people like you and Mail Right to use the same thinking as an internet marketer, but give them the best and only essential pieces as a combined software solution to serve them in as frictionless a method as possible. There's just such a big opportunity there that the reality is it's not done. Like all this, just because Lead Pages and MailChimp or Infusionsoft or whatever already exists, there's still this huge opportunity to serve a really specific market like you are. So I commend you for that.
Oh, I think you're so right, Chris, and that your audience that obviously comes to listen about courses and how that's the one thing I think they could learn about me waffling on about real estate, is you really, to be successful in your course, in your target, you should nicheify as much as possible. Obviously, you could overdo it, but in reality, unless it's a very, very, very niche audience, you're still going to be talking in the tens of thousands if you're talking about a global world market, aren't you, Chris?
Yeah. I mean, if it's whatever Kevin Kelly wrote about 1,000 true fans, you only need 100 people paying you $1,000 a year, or 1,000 people paying you $100 a year, and now you have a lifestyle business or whatever,
Yeah.
So I recently did an interview with somebody who was saying go 4 levels deep. Like if you don't do like writers or salespeople, like, take it down, then take it down again, and then take it down again, and then you have a niche market.
Yeah, I would probably agree. Obviously, there's a lot of variables there depending on the industry. So to finish off, we have one final product which is aimed at helping real estate agents with open houses about actually getting people to give them their contact details, which then that can go into the monthly newsletter. So we give them a product that helps them on a tablet get those details into the system much more easier.
That's beautiful. I just want to highlight that one point right there. As a technologist and marketer, we know the power of building the email list, but so much of the world they're not technologists or internet marketers. So if you can help people No matter what age or whatever, just the fact that they're non-technical, help them with the best practice, like capturing leads at an open house, which is typically people come to the house and they walk around. There's not necessarily a way to get the email. I love that. You're making it easy for someone to kind of step into like modern marketing.
Yeah. Well, the one area that I decided that we weren't going to go down was to turn Mail Right into CRM, because there's over half a dozen industry-focused CRMs. Well, what CRM, folks, is a customer relation management system. But there was a number. Our system will integrate with 2 to 3 of the leading ones. And to be quite truthful, though, I have managed to get over 100 users to Mail Right, but it's been a lot harder because what I didn't take into account, folks, is my biggest competitor was none of the other, and there's a lot of marketing software products aimed at real estate agents, folks. There is a ton of them, but none of them are my real competitor. Guess what my real competitor is, Chris?
I don't know. Is it something from the internet marketing world?
No. My biggest competitor is doing nothing.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so this comes down to the issue that I like to describe as it's I'm not saying this is necessarily the case with you, but you have to offer a solution and not a suggestion. And if somebody feels like it's a suggestion, it's easy to do nothing. And that might be just a communication or a marketing problem or a feature problem or whatever. But what's your take on it, on your competition?
It's just easier. It's just easier, even though you know that you need to touch base with your clientele more often. You need to keep yourself, up. Real estate agents, and also most people, and this applies to a lot of businesses, is they get into a lot of freelancers or business owners. They get into what I call the figure of 8 problem, and that's the figure 8 is I'm looking for clients. I get clients. Now I've got to do the work. Got to do the work. But got no time to market. Ain't got no time to market. Then I've got no clients. So I've got to market now. Oh, I've got clients now. So they're in that perpetual hamster wheel, that figure 8, where and real estate agents are like that. So you've got to provide services where they could spend like a half hour to add some local content, but they also know that their Facebook page will be updated. So it won't look, because the reason why that's important is most of the people that are going to hire you are sussing you out online about 3 to 6 months before they hire you.
Yeah.
And if you can't market yourself effectively online as a real estate agent, why would they think that you'll be able to market their home effectively?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's the best marketing advice I've ever heard. I would say show, don't tell. Like, it's all, I mean, talk is cheap. Yeah, it's good to have good communication, but showing is always better than telling.
So we provide programs, but that your main question, how do you get over, because I didn't know my main enemy would be to do nothing.
Well, I just want to say, I think that's true for a lot of course creators too, is they're trying to help people, but they're actually bumping up against this exact same issue as but the people they're trying to help might just do nothing. So what will you tell them to do? What's your advice? Or what's your experience?
You really got, there's only 2 drivers that gets people to overcome. Nobody will be criticised normally for doing nothing. Only when they're close to death and they realise they wasted their life, right? But most people do not get criticised for doing nothing. They get a lot of criticism. Well, you spent $3,000 on a course, you dodo, or online course or something, or you bought that product. then they could. So there's two main drivers, and that's fear and greed. Basically, so we're adding some new functionality because most agents want to get leads, and what you classify as a lead, we could discuss that for a whole new episode. But we're going to hopefully, with our update, provide the ability of an agent at a reasonable price to get a reasonably good quality lead that any professional should have a chance of turning into a commission check. And we're going to be introducing that because that appeals to the greed element of that thing. But if you can find a product that can help either on the greed side or can help on the fear side, that they are normally two strong drivers to overcome what is your real main competitor, which is doing nothing.
Very well said. I appreciate that. And, appealing to somebody's greed, or another way to say that would be their self-interest.
Yes. A nicer way of putting it.
Is that's good. I mean, that's not a bad thing to really appeal to that. And, I'm not a big believer in like fake scarcity or anything like that, but there is a lot of things that people, I wouldn't say should be fearful about, but here's another, let me PC it again, have some concern about. So if we look at things like automation, like truck driving, number one job in the United States. Okay, we see self-driving cars and logistics transportation coming. So automation is going to continually, it is an issue for the future, and jobs are going to change, and what's going to be in demand is going to be creative problem solvings that is beyond the ability of the computer algorithm or robotics. So there is, I wouldn't say be fearful about that, but have some concern. And if you're going to position yourself or your business or strategically for your family or whatever for the future, let's have a healthy dose of concern. And when whatever your market or your niche is, think about greed, think about self-interest, think about fear, think about concern, and really address those.
But I think when it comes to your course listeners, I think they really got to put themselves in the mind of the consumer of the course. And what are the drivers that would drive somebody to pay for your course? And you've got to be very honest about it.
Yeah. Very well said. Well, Jonathan Denwood, ladies and gentlemen, I want to honor you and thank you for coming on the show and sharing your life experience. And, you mentioned how you got into multimedia in the early days. And we live in a world of abundance, like as an online course creator or online business builder, times are interesting, but we have all these powerful tools that you've never had more at your fingertips. So the world may be challenging and complex, but there is also a level of abundance here, and there's, opportunities to be had. And Jonathan, you sharing your experience helps us see how to think about that and how to leverage these tools and learn from some of the things that you've done as we approach our online businesses. So thank you for coming on the show. Do you have any final thoughts? And also, can you let us know where people can find out more about you?
Actually, I was thinking about this, and you probably might not agree with this, or you might agree with this. I think a lot of people, especially when they're starting off, they want to develop the website, buy your fantastic product if they're looking at building a course and trying to do this themselves. I really would advise them, I don't think it's worth spending the time on that. I think it's better if you buy Chris's fantastic product, but then hire a developer to make your website and integrate it. I would spend the time learning the fundamentals on online marketing, of SEO, of email marketing, of utilizing Facebook paid advertisement, because really getting that, you should be really concentrating on how you're going to get clients to your great website and get them to sign up for your course. And there's only so many hours in a day. And I think for a reasonable price, it's going to be reasonably easy to get a decent developer and get that site up and running. But I think at a price, it's not feasible for you to buy an SEO expert or an expert to do all this marketing. It's just too many hours, and it'd be out of your price range. So that's where you should be concentrating your time and learning and knowledge.
That's awesome. I 100% agree with you. You can't do it all. Business is really just two things, marketing and innovation. The innovation is your course, and then there's all this marketing, the LMS software, the online course, or the membership site software. That's just a tool to get it done. Yes, it adds value, but the places where the most value is in your course itself, the content and the method that you teach, and then also in your marketing strategy for getting that. How are you going to get that out, especially if you're new and relatively unknown? So where can people find you on the interwebs, John?
I'm really easy to find. Just put Jonathan Denwood into Google and you just find me. But I'm pretty active on my Twitter feed. That's at Jonathan Denwood. The WP-Tonic and the WP Mail Right site. But the WP-Tonic, we have a large group of people, and it's got a lot of information about WordPress. So that's at www.wp-tonic.com. There is a lot of, we recently been doing an audit, and we were amazed at the amount of pages that are on that website. And if you're in real estate, plus looking to start your own course, do a look at the Mail Right product, because it's fantastic value, and we are going to be updating it in the near future, and it's I feel it's going to become a really fantastic, interesting product, Chris.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.